There is a ghost haunting your life, and that ghost is the person you have spent 20 years pretending to be. You know the sensation of this haunting, even if you have never given it a name. It is the suffocating, low-level anxiety that hums in your chest when you walk into a room full of people you need to impress. It is the exhaustion that settles into your bones, not after a day of hard physical labor, but after a day of frantic social maintenance, of filtering your words, curating your expressions, and adjusting your mask to ensure that the world sees the you that is successful, competent, and good. You have built a citadel of identity, a fortress of reputation, and you stand on the ramparts every single day, terrified that a single slip, a single moment of raw honesty will bring the whole structure crashing down. You are tired. You are tired of the hustle, tired of the constant optimization, tired of the relentless grinding pressure to be better. And in the dark, quiet moments before sleep takes you, a terrifying question whispers from the corners of your mind. What would happen if you just stopped? What would happen if you put down the weapons, walked off the ramparts, and let the fortress burn? Most people recoil from this thought as if it were a death sentence. They believe that if they stop becoming, if they stop striving, stop climbing, stop manicuring their persona, they will dissolve into irrelevance. They fear that without the tension of ambition holding them together, they will become nothing. But this fear is the greatest lie of the modern age. The truth is far more radical and far more dangerous to the status quo. The moment you stop trying to become someone is not the moment you die, it is the moment you are finally born. It is the moment the massive reservoir of energy you have been wasting on image maintenance flows back into the system of your soul. It is the moment you stop being a frantic architect of a facade and become the dangerous, unshakable inhabitant of your own life. But to reach this state, to cross the threshold from the exhausting performance of becoming to the terrifying power of being, you must understand the mechanism of the trap you are in, and you must be willing to survive the violent withdrawal of your own ego. History gives us a stark blood and dirt example of this collision between the performative self and the authentic self. Consider the meeting between Alexander the Great and Diogenes of Sinope. Alexander was the ultimate avatar of becoming. He was the conqueror of the known world, a man whose entire identity was built on the accumulation of power, territory, and glory. He was the tower, tall, imposing, visible from miles away, but constantly vulnerable to the winds of fortune, constantly needing more stones to maintain his height. Diogenes, on the other hand, was the house. He was a philosopher who had stripped away every layer of social pretense. He lived in a ceramic tub in the marketplace of Athens. He owned nothing but a cloak and a staff. He had stopped trying to be a citizen, stopped trying to be respected, stopped trying to be someone. When Alexander, casting a long shadow over the philosopher, asked if there was anything he could do for him, offering wealth, power, or favor, Diogenes simply looked up, squinting against the sun, and said, "Yes, stand a little out of my sun." The court gasped. This was a death sentence. You do not speak to the King of Kings this way. But Alexander did not rage. He did not strike him down. He stood there, stunned by the sheer, unshakable density of a man who needed nothing from him, a man who could not be bribed, threatened, or impressed, because he was not playing the game of identity. As he walked away, Alexander reportedly said to his generals, "If I were not Alexander, I wished I were Diogenes." Think about that. The man who had everything wished he could be the man who had nothing. Why? Because Alexander knew he was a slave to his own legend. He knew that he had to wake up every morning and be Alexander. He had to conquer the next city, win the next battle, maintain the towering edifice of his reputation. Diogenes just had to wake up. Alexander saw in Diogenes the one thing his empire could not buy: total, absolute freedom from the burden of becoming someone. We are all Alexanders in miniature, enslaved by what psychologists might call the deficit model of identity. From the moment you enter the school system, you are indoctrinated with the belief that you are a raw material that needs to be processed into a valuable product. You are taught that you are something that happens in the future. You will be someone when you get the degree, when you get the promotion, when you get the six-pack, when you find the partner. You treat the present moment not as a place to live, but as a waiting room. You treat your current self not as a human being, but as a draft version, a before picture waiting for its after. This creates a permanent, structural state of internal lack. You are constantly leaning forward, off balance, reaching for a horizon that moves as you move. You run faster, work harder, listen to more podcasts, and optimize your morning routine, all in the desperate hope that one day you will finally arrive. But you never arrive, because the someone you are trying to become is a ghost. It is a mental projection that feeds on your dissatisfaction. As long as you are trying to become, you cannot be.
But what happens when you decide to stop? What happens when you look at the tower you are building, drop the stone, and sit down in the dirt like Diogenes? The first thing that happens is not peace, it is terror. We must be honest about the cost of this transformation. The process of unbecoming is not a gentle meditation, it is a violent detox. When you stop feeding the avatar starts to scream. You will experience a profound identity crisis. You will feel invisible. Without the external validation that comes from striving, you will feel like you are disappearing. Your ego, which has sustained itself on the drama of your potential, will panic. It will tell you that you are lazy, that you are a failure, that you are wasting your life. You will look at your friends and rivals who are still running the race, still adding stones to their towers, and you will feel a sharp, sickening pang of envy and doubt. This is the escalation. This is the dark night of the soul where you must sit in the void of your own existence without reaching for a phone or a project or a status symbol to prove you exist. You have to face the fact that without your achievements, without your curated personality, you are just a conscious awareness witnessing the world. It is humiliating, it is grounding, it is the death of the specialness you worked so hard to manufacture. And then, if you stay in the fire long enough, if you refuse to pick the mask back up, the shift happens. It is subtle at first, like the silence after a deafening noise stops. You realize that the anxiety is gone. The heavy armor you dropped is not missed. You realize that you do not need to become confident. Confidence is simply the absence of the desire to impress. You do not need to become interesting. You are naturally interesting when you are no longer filtering your words through a fear of judgment. You realize that the someone you were trying to be was actually blocking the light of who you are. The energy that was bound up in the structure of your ego is released back into the system, and suddenly you have access to a power you never knew existed. This is the identity shift from becoming to being. It is not a passive state. It is about acting from a place of fullness rather than a place of lack. When you stop trying to be a great writer and just right, the words flow with a brutal honesty that was impossible before. When you stop trying to be a perfect leader and just lead, people follow you because they sense the solidity of a human being who is not looking for their approval. You become dangerous in the best possible way. You become unbribable. You cannot be manipulated by flattery or destroyed by criticism because you are no longer trading in the currency of other people's opinions. You are the mountain, and the weather outside, be it praise or blame, is just weather. You move through the world with a strange, magnetic frictionlessness. You work hard, but you don't burn out because you are not burning your own soul as fuel. You speak your truth, not to be right, but because it is the only thing that makes sense to say. You engage with people not to extract value from them or to use them as mirrors for your own vanity, but to actually see them. The desperate, grasping hunger that defined your previous interactions is replaced by a curious, open generosity. You are no longer a beggar at the table of life, hoping for scraps of validation. You are the host.
This is the ultimate rebellion. In a world that runs on your insecurity, in an economy that depends on you feeling inadequate so that you will buy things to fill the hole, choosing to be sufficient is an act of war. It is a rejection of the assembly line. It is a declaration that you are not a product to be improved, but a mystery to be explored. But do not think this is a path for the weak. It requires a warrior's discipline to kill the part of you that wants to be admired. It requires a fanatic's resolve to ignore the applause and the booing alike. It requires you to be willing to be misunderstood, to be called crazy, to be seen as losing your edge by people who are still sharpening their blades against their own throats. So, look at the tower you are building. Look at the stones you are carrying. Look at the fatigue in your hands and the hollowness in your eyes. Ask yourself, is it worth it? Is the view from the top really going to be worth the life you are missing at the bottom? Or are you ready to let it fall? Are you ready to walk away from the construction site and light the fire in the hearth? The world does not need another someone. It does not need another copy of a copy, another polished resume, another curated feed. The world needs you. It needs the raw, unpolished, terrifyingly real version of you that exists when you stop performing. It needs the you that is not trying to become anything, but is simply, ferociously, unapologetically being. This is the invitation. It is not a promise of riches or fame, though those often come to those who do not need them. It is a promise of reality. It is a promise that you can lay down the burden. You can stop the war against yourself. You can come home. But you have to be the one to drop the stone. You have to be the one to walk away from the tower. And you have to do it now, before the sun goes down and you are left in the dark with nothing but a silhouette. If you are ready to stop becoming and start being, then you are ready for the Mind Supremacy Codex. We do not build towers here. We build foundations. We do not teach you how to wear a mask. We teach you how to take it off without tearing your skin. Join us and let us find out who you are when you stop trying to be who you aren't.